On January 24, 2026, a man was killed by federal agents right on a street in Minneapolis. Now, how it all went down? Well, that depends entirely on who you ask, because we have two completely, and I mean completely different stories about what happened.
So let's start with the official story. The Department of Homeland Security came out with their version almost right away. They said their agents were approached by an armed man, someone they claimed was hell-bent on causing a massacre.
But then, a video surfaced, bystander video, and what it showed seemed to tell a totally different story. You see a man holding a cell phone, not a gun, who gets tackled, pinned to the frozen pavement by a whole swarm of agents, and then shot.
Okay, so you see the problem here, right? The gap between these two accounts is just massive. They can't both be true. So what really happened? To even begin to figure that out, we have to understand who this man actually was.
The man at the very center of this whole firestorm was 37-year-old Alex Jeffrey Pretti. And once you start looking into his life, the government's narrative starts to look, well, a little shaky.
So was he this violent person looking for a fight? Far from it. Alex Pretti was a registered nurse. He worked in the intensive care unit at the Minneapolis VA, and his job every single day was to save the lives of U.S. military veterans.
And don't just take my word for it. His colleagues, people like Dr. Dmitry Drakonya, the chief of infectious diseases at the VA, backed this up. He said Pretti was a dedicated caregiver who actually left a career in research so he could help people more directly. And the picture of who he was just gets more and more complex. He was a former scientist, loved the outdoors, and yeah, he owned a gun, but he had a valid permit for it. A background check? It showed nothing more than some minor traffic tickets.
So why was he even on the street that day? According to his own father, it was really an extension of that caregiving nature. He was just deeply upset by the huge federal presence in his city and felt that protesting was his way of protecting his community.
And this part is absolutely crucial. Pretti's death didn't just happen out of the blue. It took place during something called Operation Metro Surge, a massive federal operation that had put the entire city of Minneapolis on a knife's edge.
The scale here is just enormous. We're talking about roughly 3,000 federal agents, from ICE, from Border Patrol, from Homeland Security, all deployed across Minneapolis and St. Paul.
And to put that number into perspective for you, that deployment meant federal agents outnumbered the entire Minneapolis Police Department by about 5-1. It basically created this parallel police force that didn't answer to any local leaders. And these agents were operating under some, let's just say, controversial new rules. A leaked memo from May of 2025 gave them the power to enter private homes using only administrative warrants. Think about that. Paperwork signed by other immigration officials, not by a judge. It was a workaround to bypass the courts. So you've got this overwhelming federal force combined with these expanded powers. It created a total powder keg. And in the weeks leading right up to Pretti's death, that keg had already started to explode. The escalation was just incredibly fast. On January 7th, Renee Good, a U.S. citizen and a mother, was killed by an agent. A week later, another man, Julio Cesar Sosa Silas, was shot in a case of mistaken identity. Then, the day before Pretti's death, the entire city shuts down for a general strike. Tensions were at an absolute breaking point. And you start to see a pattern emerging here, right? In the Renee Good case, DHS called her a domestic terrorist who tried to run over an agent. But the forensic evidence? It suggested she was actually shot from the side while driving away. It's that same clash of stories all over again. All of this violence on the streets, it just sparked an all-out war in the courts. It pitted the state of Minnesota directly against the federal government. We're talking about a full-blown constitutional crisis. Minnesota's attorney general literally sued the federal government, arguing this whole operation was unconstitutional. A federal judge actually agreed enough to issue a court order, one that specifically barred agents from using force against people who were just observing or protesting. Alex Pretti, who was filming with his phone, seems to fall right into that protected group. And the breakdown of law and order here was just absolute. After Pretti was killed, Minnesota's own investigators got a valid search warrant for the crime scene. But get this, federal agents physically blocked them from entering. The state's own governor called it unprecedented.
Which brings us right back to where we started. Two stories. One is about a man who wanted to massacre law enforcement. The other is about a nurse who was just trying to help his community.
I mean, these two stories are from different planets.
DHS says he came at them with a gun, planning a massacre. But witnesses say he was filming with a phone and only got involved after an agent shoved a woman. DHS claims he was a threat. The video suggests he was pinned on the ground and possibly even disarmed when those fatal shots were fired.
The local reaction was, let's just say, not subtle. The mayor of Minneapolis, Jacob Frey, he did not mince words. His statement really just shows the total and complete collapse of trust and cooperation between the city and the feds.
And all of this leaves us with a final, really chilling question. The case of Alex Pretti, the ICU nurse, it forces us to ask, when the very systems that are supposed to provide checks and balances are ignored, state laws, local police, even court orders, who is actually in charge, and more importantly, who is left to protect us?